When a woman realizes you're no longer hers, not just physically, but mentally, emotionally, spiritually, she doesn't cry, she calculates, she performs, she escalates. This is the moment most men miss. You think she's hurting, you think she's processing, but no, she's already 10 steps into a game she believes she still controls. Because in her world, your love was never about connection. It was about access, and once she realizes she can't reach you anymore, that's when everything changes. So I want every man watching this to comment below, "She lost access." Because today, we're diving deep into how women treat you when they know, not guess, not suspect, know they've lost you. And more importantly, how you rise above it, use it, and transform into a man she never expected you to become. Number 1. She acts cold. She doesn't act cold because she doesn't care. She acts cold because she's losing control, and that terrifies her more than any heartbreak ever could. She acts like you never mattered because the reality that she no longer has access to you burns her pride in places she doesn't want to admit even exist. And every time she ignores your messages, pretends she doesn't see you, or posts that laugh with someone else in frame, it's not peace. It's a desperate performance staged to convince herself she's still winning, because what's really happening inside her is a quiet, terrifying awareness that her presence no longer has weight in your life, and that truth cuts deeper than any breakup ever did. The truth is, when you were still in her orbit, texting, chasing, giving her attention, she felt untouchable. But now, as she scrolls through your profile and sees nothing that references her, no captions, no reactions, no validation, just you, living, progressing, ignoring her existence as if she was never part of your story, it hits her like a freight train, and instead of dealing with that loss, she masks it with emotional ice because pretending you never mattered is easier than admitting she lost a man who finally realized his worth. And this is where most men slip. They see that coldness and assume it's strength, assume she really is over them, assume they were insignificant. But the truth is, emotional detachment in the female post-breakup arsenal is often a weapon used not for healing, but for survival. Because she knows that if she lets herself feel the sting of losing a man who once loved her without limits, who once saw her as everything, who once broke himself to make her whole, if she lets that truth settle in her chest, it will break the image she's been building of being fine, and so she has to double down, acting like you were just a phase, just an option, just a lesson. Not because it's true, but because admitting otherwise would force her to face her own reflection and the choices that cost her something rare. Now here's where you come in, not to react, not to challenge, not to engage, but to observe, learn, and redirect your energy where it matters, because when she acts cold, it's not your job to warm her up. It's your responsibility to recognize that your journey no longer revolves around proving your value to someone who already had a chance and wasted it. And so instead of trying to decode her silence, you need to create new noise in your own life, not the kind that begs for attention, but the kind that builds results. Start by grabbing a notebook, not your phone, and write down 3 things you said you'd do when you were in that relationship but never had time for. Maybe it was starting that side business. Maybe it was getting your fitness back. Maybe it was traveling solo. Whatever it is, break it down into one step you can take today, even if it's tiny, because the moment you stop orbiting her narrative and start building your own is the moment her coldness stops being a threat and starts being a mirror for who she no longer has access to. Understand that her performance is not for the world. It's for you. It's bait, a test, a game of emotional chess designed to see if you'll blink, and when you don't, when you post nothing, when you stop showing up online for her to study, when you walk past her with the same peace she used to weaponize, she begins to spiral, not because you're cruel, but because you've become something she no longer understands, a man who no longer needs her reaction to feel seen. This level of growth is rare because most men get trapped in the loop of needing to be validated by the woman who discarded them, needing closure, needing recognition for their pain. But you must understand that your healing will never come from her mouth. It will come from your decisions, from your refusal to participate in emotional theater, from your new morning routine that begins with discipline instead of distraction, from your daily choice to show up for yourself, not to prove her wrong, but to prove yourself right. You've got to internalize the fact that no amount of pretending, no performance, no cold glance or sarcastic caption changes the fact that you were real, that your love had depth, and that your exit left a void she will eventually feel, no matter how hard she tries to bury it under new beginnings. Because genuine love doesn't evaporate, it echoes, and when the noise of her performance fades, the silence of what she lost will scream in her mind louder than any words you could have said. So instead of trying to read between her lines, start writing your own story. One that doesn't include emotional regression or desperate validation, but one that is built on results, focus, and purpose. Cut her off, not just on the phone, but in your mind, in your habits, in your emotional reflexes. Because if you keep checking for updates on her life, you're still living in the chapter she ended, and you weren't designed to be a footnote in her story. You're the main character of your own. Take back your energy, channel it into something that builds you, whether it's your body, your business, your craft, or your character, because once you become unshakable, her coldness stops being a storm and becomes background noise you don't even hear anymore, and that's when you win. Not because you destroyed her, not because you replaced her, but because you became so aligned with your own growth that even her best performance couldn't interrupt your momentum, and in the end, that's the ultimate revenge. Not success she can see, but peace she can't touch, power she no longer influences, and a future where her name isn't even mentioned. Not out of hate, but because she simply no longer matters to the man who finally remembered who he is. And that's when you realize you don't need revenge, closure, or even to be remembered. What you need is direction, structure, purpose so real it carries you past everything that ever tried to break you. And if you're ready for that, truly ready to stop chasing and start building, to let go of performance and step into unshakable power, then the Stoic Relationship Blueprint is your next step. This isn't just another ebook. It's a complete guide filled with timeless principles that anchor your mind, strengthen your character, and transform how you see women, relationships, and yourself. And now, for the first time ever, it's available as an audiobook, so you can absorb this life-changing knowledge while walking, training, or even just clearing your head, because wisdom should meet you where you are. Ask yourself, how many more days will you spend confused? How long will you let someone else's choices dictate your peace? Why not invest once and gain access forever to the kind of insight that keeps giving every time you listen? The link is in the comments. This book won't just sit on your shelf. It'll live in your mind, sharpening your clarity every day forward. Number 2. She tests your reaction. She doesn't test you because she's curious. She tests you because she's desperate for proof that she still matters to a man who's finally realized he doesn't need her approval to validate his existence. And the moment you stop chasing, the second you stop orbiting her, she moves from passive indifference into strategic pursuit, not with love, not with vulnerability, but with calculated emotional bait designed to see if she can still pull you into her game, because the coldness failed, the silence didn't shake you, and now she's reaching into her toolkit of manipulation, pulling out every subtle move that used to work. And this is where most men fall, because the tests don't look aggressive. They look innocent, harmless, nostalgic, like a whisper from the past. but that whisper is designed to pull you back into a war she already walked away from. You get that, "Hey, just checking in," or "Did you ever find that thing I left?" or "Saw something today that reminded me of you," and you pause, your heart skips, you think maybe she cares again, maybe there's hope. But what she's really doing is measuring your weakness, because the moment you respond, even with a neutral, "Hope you're good too," she knows she still has emotional equity in your life. And that's the truth no one wants to admit. She doesn't want you back. She wants to know if you're still emotionally attached, still orbiting, still hers in spirit, even if not in status. And this is the moment that determines everything, because how you respond to her tests will either reinforce her belief that she owns your emotional real estate, or it will shatter that illusion and force her to face a man she no longer controls. And let me be clear, these tests aren't romantic. They're psychological warfare, because she's not looking for connection. She's looking for confirmation, for power, for the ability to enter your peace and interrupt it with one message. And when you reply, when you like her post, when you engage with her story, she smiles. Not because she's happy, but because she won again. And it's not even about you. It's about the ego boost she gets, knowing that despite everything, despite the disrespect, the breakup, the drama, she can still make you look her way. And that is where you have to become dangerous, not in violence, not in dominance, but in restraint, in discipline, in absolute emotional clarity, because a man who doesn't respond to the bait is a man she can't manipulate. And the worst thing you can do is try to outplay her in her game. Try to send a clever response. Try to show her you're not affected, because even your attempt to act unfazed proves that you are. And the only true power is detachment. Not fake, not performative, but real, where her words bounce off you like noise, where her messages sit unread, not out of pettiness, but because your focus is somewhere she no longer exists. And this is the test most men never pass, because we're taught to be polite, to be kind, to give closure. But understand this. Closure is a lie they sell you to reopen wounds that were finally beginning to heal. And the moment you respond, you reopen the loop. And that loop is designed to trap you in overthinking, in questioning, in false hope. And that's when your progress dies, not because you were weak, but because you were untrained in discipline. And now it's time to change that. Grab your schedule and block out time for yourself. Build structure in your life so rigid that her games feel like background static, not because you're avoiding her, but because you're too engaged in building something that finally puts you first. And yes, the tests will evolve. She'll start sending longer messages, more emotional ones, maybe even voice notes laced with memories. Maybe she'll bring up your family, your dog, your shared past, and it will feel like a reconnection, but it's not. It's a scan, a probe to see if she can still extract something from you, your time, your emotion, your attention, your pain. And once you give her that, she disappears again, because now she's fed. Now she knows she can still haunt you. And that is what you must protect yourself from, not her, but the version of yourself that still wants to believe she's different, that she cares, that this time it's real, because it's not. This is strategy, and you need one too, which means developing rituals that anchor you in reality, not illusion. Wake up and journal your thoughts, track your habits, eliminate distractions, and if she reaches out, channel that energy into your craft, your vision, your mission. Because the real revenge is building a life so fulfilling that her presence or absence becomes irrelevant. And if she really cared, she wouldn't test you. She'd be honest, direct, vulnerable. She wouldn't play. Hide and seek with your emotions. She'd show up like an adult. And if she can't do that, you owe her nothing. Not a reply, not a glance, not a thought. Because responding to emotional manipulation doesn't make you kind. It makes you complicit. and your growth depends on your refusal to participate in patterns that already broke you once. So next time the test comes, smile. Not because you're cold, but because you finally see the game, and you've chosen not to play, because the man who walks away without flinching, without closure, without comment, is the man she never forgets, because she knows deep down she didn't lose a simp. She lost a man who finally chose himself. Number 3. She shows off fake joy. She doesn't show off because she's happy. She shows off because she's hoping you still care, hoping you're watching, hoping the image she carefully crafts of freedom and fun and fulfillment will stir something inside you, not love, not regret, but the sense of loss she's too proud to admit she's feeling. And this is the deception that catches so many men off guard, because the optics don't match the emotion. The timeline doesn't make sense. 1 week after she walks away, after she throws your history in the trash, she's laughing with strangers, flying to cities she never mentioned before, wearing clothes she bought to look like she's glowing without you, and you sit there scrolling through it all, wondering how she moved on so fast, while you're still picking up the pieces. But what you don't realize is that she hasn't moved on. She's moved into performance mode, and the audience is you, because this is not growth, it's acting, it's damage control for her ego, it's crisis management wrapped in filters and captions, because if she can't heal privately, she'll perform publicly. And it's not because she wants the world to think she's fine, it's because she wants you to think she never needed you, that she's better without you, that your exit was the beginning of her rise, and this lie is her lifeline, because if she lets it crack, even for a second, the truth floods in, that she gave up something real for attention, that she traded authenticity for illusion, that she walked away from a man who loved her deeply and now has to pretend she's glad she did. And so she smiles harder, posts more, tags new guys, writes vague quotes that could be about you, about her, about anything, but you know they're for you, designed to echo in your mind when you're alone, to make you question your value, to make you doubt the entire relationship. And if you engage, if you comment, like, view, react, you confirm her illusion that she still holds emotional power over you, and that's the dopamine hit she's addicted to, not from healing, not from growth, but from knowing she can still interrupt your peace without saying a word. And this is where you must rise, not with revenge, not with bitterness, but with focus. Because the real test isn't her behavior, it's your reaction. And the more you watch her, the more you delay your own progress. Because every time you check her stories, every time you ask mutual friends about her, every time you let her in your mind, she wins. Not because she deserves to, but because you gave her that room. And that's what has to end today. Because if she really found peace, she wouldn't need to prove it. Peace is invisible. Healing is quiet. Joy is personal. It doesn't beg for attention. And you need to start using her performance as a mirror. Not to see what she's doing, but to reflect on why it still affects you. Because until you become a man who needs no external validation, who lives so deeply in his own purpose that no woman's curated reality can shift his mood, you will always be susceptible to emotional manipulation disguised as happiness. And that's the trap. They don't chase you with words. They chase you with curated images of the life you're no longer part of, hoping you'll miss it, hoping you'll regret, hoping you'll return to the place where you lost yourself in her world. And this is your call to build a life that silences the noise. Not by competing with her, but by outgrowing the part of you that ever needed her applause to feel valuable. And yes, it hurts. Yes, seeing her post a picture with another guy when you're still healing is painful. Yes, watching her celebrate while you suffer feels unfair, but pain is the price of awakening. And this moment is your initiation into a version of yourself who doesn't chase illusions, who doesn't compare timelines, who doesn't compete with someone performing for attention, because you know that your journey is real, grounded, earned, And when she realizes that her posts no longer get a rise out of you, when her trips and new outfits and cryptic captions don't pull you back into orbit, she starts to panic. Not because she misses you, but because she finally sees the gap between performance and reality, between the man who used to be obsessed and the man who now doesn't even flinch. And that's where your strength becomes legendary, because now you're not just moving on, you're evolving, not just pretending, but thriving in silence, in structure, in progress. She'll never witness, and that's the punishment her ego never saw coming. Not another man, not a harsh reply, but your complete absence from the stage she built, hoping you'd stay in the audience forever. Now it's time to rise, to structure your time so tightly that you no longer even have time to wonder what she's doing, to build daily non-negotiables, morning workouts, focused learning, journaling wins, eliminating comfort addictions, surrounding yourself with challenges that refine your character, not so she'll regret leaving, but so you'll never regret losing time chasing someone who never deserved your depth. And understand this. Every fake smile she posts is a missed opportunity to feel real emotion. Every party she goes to is a distraction from the reality she's afraid to sit in. Every "living my best life" caption is a coping mechanism that reminds her she's not actually living anything meaningful, and your job is not to expose her. It's to outgrow her, to become so focused on your own healing that her existence fades from your field of relevance, and that requires brutal discipline, the kind where you delete the app, cut the connection, shift your energy, stop giving your mind space to the very thing that kept you trapped in emotional confusion. Because the longer you stare at her illusion, the more you delay the emergence of your evolution. And this is not about pretending you don't care. It's about becoming someone who genuinely doesn't, because your time is your currency, your attention is your power, and every second you give to someone who already proved they didn't value it is a betrayal to the man you're trying to become. So from this moment forward, you don't scroll, you don't check, you don't engage, not because you're playing a game, but because you're playing for legacy now, for freedom, for clarity. And when that man emerges, when she sees the version of you that she never believed would rise without her, the man who doesn't flinch at her joy, real or fake, that's when her mask begins to fall. And that's when you finally realize that none of it was ever about her smile, her captions, her trips. It was always about your response, your discipline, your direction, and now you've reclaimed them all. Number 4. She compares herself to you. She doesn't start comparing herself to you because she suddenly misses the relationship. She does it because your growth is exposing her stagnation, your silence is echoing louder than her social proof, and your discipline is reminding her of everything she lost the moment she chose to underestimate your potential. And it begins subtly, almost invisibly at first, through back channels, quiet check-ins with mutuals, liking your old posts from fake accounts, name-dropping you in casual conversations with people she knows will carry the message back, because what she's really doing isn't reaching out. It's surveillance. It's measuring your speed against her timeline. It's watching the man who used to orbit her world evolve into someone whose gravity now pulls her attention, whether she admits it or not. And this is where it gets dangerous for both of you. Because if you're not focused, if you're not grounded in your new reality, the illusion of relevance can pull you right back into a story that already ended, because her comparisons are not admiration. They're tests, they're checks to see if you're still seeking her reaction, and what she wants more than closure is confirmation that despite everything, she still matters to you. And if you flinch, if you start posting to compete, if you start updating your life just to prove a point, she wins again, because now you're not building for yourself, you're performing for her, and your power begins to drain the moment her validation becomes your fuel again. And this is where discipline becomes everything. Because her comparison is not about who's happier, it's about who appears more healed. And you must resist the temptation to play that game, because healing isn't for show, progress isn't for applause, and the moment you start curating your growth for the sake of her perception is the moment you stop growing for real. So when you feel that pull to check if she saw your story, to wonder what she thinks of your new look, your new car, your new circle, remember this. If she really cared, she wouldn't have let you go in the first place. And if she really respected your progress, she'd say it directly, not through shadow games and silent signals. And every time you rise without making noise, you become the kind of man she feared you'd become. The one who doesn't need her energy to validate his direction, and her mind starts to spiral, not because you're winning, but because you're doing it without her, and that loss is heavier than any breakup, because it means she gave up something that became better without her. And now she has to sit in that truth while pretending she's unfazed. But the comparison will eat at her, because the truth is, women don't expect you to win after they walk away. They expect you to crumble, to chase, to fall apart. And when you don't, when you show up sharper, stronger, quieter, more refined, when you lose weight, when you dress better, when your eyes stop looking for her in crowds, when your voice becomes calmer, when your standards rise and your energy shifts, she starts to question everything, not because she wants you back, but because she can't believe she lost a man. She now has to watch from a distance. And this is where your greatest power lives, not in revenge, not in petty one-upmanship, but in your ability to build without looking back, to improve without needing anyone to see it, to level up so unapologetically that the old version of you wouldn't even recognize your current self. And the only way to sustain this is through structure. So build your day like a machine. Wake up earlier, train harder, read more, surround yourself with people who push you, not people who remind you of who you used to be. Cut off the dead weight, clean your space, optimize your environment, and every time she tries to compare, let her see a man she no longer knows how to read, because mystery in a man who used to be predictable is terrifying to the one who once pulled all his strings. And when you stop reacting, when you stop updating her indirectly, when you stop giving her anything to work with, she starts creating stories in her head, and those stories will eat at her more than any response ever could. And that's when you've truly won. Not because she's hurting, but because you're healed, and her story no longer matters. Number 5. She tries to pull you back. She doesn't try to pull you back because she wants to rebuild. She does it because she never thought you'd actually outgrow the grip she once had on you. She believed the silence was temporary, the strength was fake, the growth was performative. And when she realizes you've changed in ways that can't be undone, when she feels the emotional leash snap, she panics, not from loss, but from irrelevance, because a woman who once sat at the center of your universe now finds herself locked out of a life she thought she could always revisit. And so she returns, not always with a call or a text. Sometimes it's a story about how much she's changed. Sometimes it's mutual friends telling you she's been thinking about you. Sometimes it's a random reappearance on your feed or in your city. And when that doesn't work, she goes deeper, starts to share pain, vulnerability, confessions that sound real, feel real, and may even be real. But real doesn't always mean right, and you have to be clear. Just because someone regrets the consequences doesn't mean they're ready to honor the connection. And just because she's crying now doesn't erase the choices she made when she thought you'd never leave. And this is the final mask, the most dangerous one, because now she's not cold, not playful, not distant. She's soft, she's emotional, she's fragile. And for the man who still wants closure, still wants answers, still wants the story to make sense, this is the trap that undoes months of progress in one moment of nostalgia. Because the language she uses now isn't toxic. It's romantic, it's familiar, it's emotionally intelligent, and it sounds like everything you wished she would have said when you were begging for clarity. But now that you're standing in peace, she wants back in, And if you open that door, understand this. You're not walking into love, you're walking into an emotional reset that starts the cycle all over again. Because she's not returning to build, she's returning to re-establish access, to see if she still has influence. And the moment you give it to her, the moment you show her she can still shift your energy, the spell is broken, and her fear of losing you turns into satisfaction that you were never truly gone, and she vanishes again. Not because you did something wrong, but because her mission was complete, her ego was fed, and your growth was invalidated, not by her words, but by your own inability to protect it. And this is why you must be merciless with your progress. Not heartless, not cruel, but clear. Clear about what you've built, what you've healed, and what you refuse to let crumble again, even if the temptation is dressed in everything you used to crave, because what you're craving isn't her, it's closure. And the truth is, closure doesn't come from them. It comes from discipline, from learning the lesson so deeply that even if they return on their knees, with tears and promises and poetry, you remain unmoved. Not because you don't feel, but because you finally learned that love without respect isn't love, that attention without consistency isn't connection, and that anyone who truly valued you would have never put you in a position to doubt your own worth in the first place. And if you want to stay free, you have to choose structure over sentiment, strategy over softness, and vision over validation, which means saying no even when your body says yes, which means protecting your peace like it's your only asset, because in many ways it is. And when she sees that the man she once controlled now chooses himself over her, chooses progress over nostalgia, chooses the future over the past, she will break, not because she loves you, but because she never imagined you'd love yourself enough to never look back. And that is the victory that can't be faked, bought, or undone. It's earned in silence, in resistance, in the moments when your old life knocks and you refuse to answer. If you're tired of wasting your energy proving your worth to women who never plan to stay, if you're done repeating the same emotional cycles, hoping this time it'll be different, then this is your moment to choose something real. The Stoic relationship. Blueprint for Men isn't just a book. It's a system built on timeless truths that most men will never hear. And now you can absorb every powerful principle on the go, while walking, working out, or finally taking back control of your mind, because the audiobook version is here, and it's linked in the comments below. If you're ready to reclaim your time, your clarity, and your self-respect, comment, "I choose clarity." Smash the like button and subscribe to make sure more men hear these truths before they waste years chasing ghosts. This blueprint will transform how you see yourself, how you lead your life, and how you never lose yourself in a woman again. Grab it while it's still available.